Hello. Welcome to episode 2 of Power BI series presented to you by the Visual Appeal. In this episode, we will discuss about data analytics expressions or the DAX measures. By the end of this episode, you will be able to write your own DAX measures and analyze the numbers in your dataset in a better way.
At this juncture, I would like to introduce two concepts, row calculations and measures. While both these give exact same results, row calculations add up to the file size because a new column is inserted and calculations are performed for each row in the base data. Unless you want to see the results in the base data itself, I do not recommend using these. Now let's discuss measures. I'm sure most of us here are familiar with basic sum average formulae in Excel. Measures are nothing but a collection of functions, operators, and constants that can be used in a formula to calculate values. Measures do not increase the size of the base data, but it stores only the formulae. There are two types of measures, implicit and explicit measures. Implicit measures are pre-built functions in Microsoft Power BI, which can be used in just a click of a button. Explicit measures are tailor-made formulae that we are going to write to customize the calculations in our dashboards. Enough of all the theory. Now let's go ahead and put this to practice in Microsoft Power BI desktop version. Let's begin by exploring row calculations. And for this purpose, let's use Count Your Calories dataset. We click on Get Data, select Excel Workbook, and select Count Your Calories dataset. I'm selecting the listing sheet because I know that the base data is located here. I'm selecting Load. Just as a quick reminder, Count Your Calories dataset contains nutritional information like the protein content, carbs content, fat content in all our favorite Starbucks beverages. Now you can see that the listing sheet is loaded and all the column headers are appearing in the fields pane. Let's explore the data in the data view. We can see three types of fat, which is the trans fat, saturated fat, and other fat. Let's write a row calculation which adds up these three types of fat and shows as total fat. For this, I'm going to add a new column. So I'm selecting new column right here. I'm naming the column as total fat in grams. This is going to be sum of trans fat plus saturated fat plus other fat. You can see as I'm typing, Microsoft Power BI prompts the column header. You can either select that with a mouse click or hit enter. So finally, I'm hitting enter and you can see total fat calculated for each and every row in the base data. And now this forms part of our base data and is a row calculation. Let's understand the difference between row calculation and measures in the report view. Just to show the difference, I'm going to use a table visualization, but don't worry, we will look into visualizations in detail as we proceed to episode 3. I'm going to add a few parameters to the table. Let's say the temperature, beverage category, and three types of fat, which is the trans fat, saturated fat, and other fat. Now you can see total fat appears as a column. This is a row calculation that we just did, which is denoted by the symbol right beside it. I'm dragging that to the table as well. I'm going to make these values a tad bit bigger so that you can see it better. We will deal with formatting and visualization in the next episode. All right, now we have this table right here. Now let's write a measure for total fat. You can do that by clicking on New Measure. And I'm going to name this measure as Total Fat Measure. this is going to be sum of total fat. So you can see that I'm writing a formula just like how we write it in Excel. So it's the sum of total fat. I'm hitting enter. You can see total fat measure being created as a value here. And you can see a tiny calculator symbol beside it, which just denotes that it's a measure. I'm dragging the total fat measure to the table as well, just so you can see the difference between row calculation and measures. And ta-da, it's the same value. So be it row calculation, be it measure, it's going to give us the same value. The only difference is that a row calculation adds to the bulk of the base data and a measure just stores the formula. I hope that's clear. And now let's move on to intrinsic and extrinsic measure. I'm going to use the same table, but let's switch up the parameters a bit. Let's see. So what if I want to analyze maximum protein content in every beverage category? So I'm going to drag and drop protein. Now it gives me sum of protein, right? So if I have to find the maximum protein, I click on the tiny down arrow right here and I change it to maximum. As simple as that, I get maximum protein content in every beverage category. Now let's analyze caffeine content. Now, what if I have to analyze average caffeine content? I again click on this tiny down arrow and I select average. All these are pre-built measures in Microsoft Power BI and are called intrinsic measures. Now let's try one more parameter before we move on to extrinsic measure. Let's analyze the calories. I'm going to drag and drop the calories column, and I'm going to find out minimum calories in each of the beverage category. And there it goes. Let's move on to extrinsic measure. Now, what if your nutritionist recommends limiting sugars to less than 20% of total calories? We might want to write a formula for that and find out the sugar content proportionate to the total calories of every drink. So the formula will be total sugar by total calories, of course, but we can do that only if we have total sugar value and total calories value. Now, let's quickly write two new measures to find out the total sugar and total calories in each and every Starbucks beverage in our data set. For that, we'll click on New Measure. I'm going to name this Total Sugar Content, which is going to be sum of all sugars. I'm hitting enter. You can see total sugar content created as a measure right here on the right. I'm going to click on New Measure again and calculate total calories, which is sum of calories. I hit enter. I have total sugar content and total calories. Now to find the proportion, all we have to do is just divide the two. I'm going to add a new measure for that again. I'm going to say proportion of sugar is equal to, I'm going to use the divide function because I'm dividing sugar and calories. So total sugar content, comma, total calories. I hit enter. Now let's add this proportion of sugar to the table and understand which beverage category has a sugar content less than 20%. Now this appears as a decimal. So what you can do is select on the measure, go to Format. Right now it's in General. Let's click on the drop down and change it to percentage. Now you can see the proportion of sugar as a percentage and understand that hot drink, light blended coffee, tea drink, signature espresso drinks, smoothies, and classic espresso drinks, and coffee These are all under the 20% threshold suggested by our nutritionist. So these are extrinsic measures that we can write and analyze data better.
Now that we understand implicit versus explicit measures and we were able to write our own measure, let's take it up a notch. Let's understand the equals calculate function.
Drawing a parallel between Excel and Microsoft Power BI, I would say that equals calculate function does the exact same thing as a SUMIF function in Excel. It answers pinpointed questions by filtering out various parameters in the data. Now let's try answering the question, number of hot drinks that are classic espressos and which have caffeine content greater than 150. Now let's find out the answer using equals calculate function in Microsoft Power BI. To do that, we'll first click on new measure. What we want to analyze is number of classic espresso drinks high in caffeine content. I'm going to start using the equals calculate function. The answer that we want is in terms of the number of beverages. So we are going to use the count function. We are going to count the number of beverages, close parentheses, and we'll start writing the filters. The first filter is going to be in terms of temperature of the drink. We are going to analyze hot drinks only. So our filter is going to be hot drinks inside double quotes because this is a text filter. If it's a number filter, it will not be inside double quotes, and you will see that when we come to the caffeine content filter. Our next filter will be in terms of beverage category, where we are going to filter out for classic espresso drinks only. That's again inside double quotes. And the final filter will be in terms of caffeine content greater than 150. We are going to press enter. And we see that this particular measure is created in the fields pane. Just to check the answer, I'm going to use a card. We will talk about visualizations in the next episode, so stay tuned. I'm going to drag and drop the answer. Now we found out that there are 8 drinks that are classic espressos and which have a caffeine content greater than 150.
I hope you found that useful. Now off to episode 3, visualizations. Happy learning and see you in the next video.